So in the third part of lecture 2,
Start.
okay, so in the third part of lecture 2 we are going to study about the probability of an event. So before getting into the exact topic, let us revise the definition of an event. In first lecture we discussed that the event is simply some collection of sample points. So in first lecture we already learnt about the event, that an event is simply some collection of the sample points, and by sample points we mean the experimental outcomes. Whatever random experiment we are performing, its all outcomes are called sample points. So whenever we collect certain amount of the those experimental outcomes, whenever we take some of those sample points, those experimental outcomes, that collection, that count is called the event for that particular random experiment. So for example, we may discuss some of the events. For example, our experiment is that we are rolling a die. So when we roll a die, all the possible outcomes that we can have are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 dots on the face of the die. So these are the all possibilities that we can have once we are rolling a die. Now we may define any sort of event out of these sample points, or out of these experimental outcomes, or out of these possible outcomes. Say for example, we are defining an event that that getting less than 3 dots on the face of the die when we are rolling it. We are defining another event that getting 4 or more dots on the face of the die. Or we may define some third event that getting odd dots, odd number of dots. Any fourth event that getting 7 dots. Or anything else. So if we define any such events, like we define that getting 3 dots or less, okay. Yes. So getting less than 3 dots on the face of the die, or getting 4 dots or more than 4 dots, getting odd number of dots, getting even number of dots, getting 7 dots on the face of a die, or getting a head while we are rolling a die. So we may write all the possible outcomes that can satisfy this condition. While we are defining an event, we are prescribing certain condition, some situation, and all the possible outcomes which can fulfill the need of that situation are the elements of that event, are the members of that event. So if I am writing the possible outcomes for this event, it would be getting 1 on the face of the die, or getting 2 on the face of a die. So because both the outcomes satisfy this situation, that the dots are lesser than 3. Similarly, for the second event, I can have, if I get exactly 4 dots on the face of the die, I'm okay with the situation is satisfied. Or if I'm getting more than 4 dots, for example I'm getting 5 dots, or I'm getting 6 dots on the face of the die, I'm still okay with this situation. For the third event, it's written that getting odd number of dots. So if I get 1 dot on the face of the die, 3 dots or 5 dots, I am okay. These all points satisfy the third situation. The fourth one says getting 7 dots on the face of a die. So like we are rolling a die and the only possible outcomes are getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. There is no possibility that we can have 7 on the face of a die. So this condition cannot be satisfied by any of the outcomes. We would name this as a null event, or we may say that this is an impossible event. Similarly, getting a head while we are rolling a die is not possible. It's none of the options. It cannot be achieved no matter how hard we try, no matter how many times we repeat that experiment. Start rolling a die from the morning till the evening, you would never get a head. So we may say that there is no any element, there is no any outcome possible which can satisfy this situation. I cannot have any of these outcomes which can satisfy this situation. So it has got no element, it has got no outcome, it is an empty event. Now once we are clear with the definition of an event, the next thing is to assign probabilities to for an event. We say that the probability of a complete event is the sum of the probabilities for all its components, for all its elements, for all its sample points. मतलब अगर आप इवेंट की प्रोबेबिलिटी निकालना चाहते हैं, कंप्लीट इवेंट की प्रोबेबिलिटी देखना चाहते हैं, तो आपने कंपोनेंट वाइज, आउटकम वाइज उसकी प्रोबेबिलिटी लेनी है और उसका सम कर देना है. दैट वुड बी द टोटल प्रोबेबिलिटी ऑफ दैट इवेंट. Say for example, if I am calculating the probability of this event, that is getting less than 3 dots on the face of the die, I would calculate the probability of getting 1, the probability of getting 1 and the probability of getting 2 dots. Like I would get the I would find the probability of both the outcomes. The probability of getting 1 dot on the face of the die is 1/6, as we discussed in the second part of the lecture. The probability of getting 2 on the face of die is also 1/6, so we would add both the probabilities and the total probability would be 2/6 or 1/3. So we would say that the probability for event 1 is 1/3. Similarly, for the second event, when the event is getting 4 dots or more than 4 dots on the experimental outcomes, the possibilities were getting 4 or 5 or 6 dots. So when we are finding the probability of this complete event, we would find the probability of getting 4, we would find the probability of getting 5, we would calculate the probability of getting 6. Once we calculated all these 3 probabilities, we would sum them up. So this would be the probability of getting 4 plus probability of getting 5 plus getting 6, and this would be 1/6 plus 1/6 plus 1/6, which would turn out to be 3/6, which is a half. So we would say that probability of getting event 2 is a half. Similarly, the probability for the third event would be finding the probability of all the components of that event and then summing those probabilities. So this would be probability of 1 plus probability of getting 3 plus probability of getting 5. As we know that probability of getting 1 is a 1/6, this is also 1/6, and this one is also 1/6. So again this would become 3/6 or a half, and we would say that probability of getting event 3 is a half. The similar way, the probability for getting event 4, that the probability of getting 7, as we see that this event has got no element, this has no any outcome, so we would say that what are the chances of getting nothing. Whenever we are rolling a die, there are as much as chances of getting 7 as much as chances of getting nothing. So दोनों एक ही बात है. अगर मैं कह दूं कि डाई रोल करने से 7 डॉट्स आए डाई के फेस पे, उसके कितने चांसेस हैं, या मैं कहूं कि डाई रोल करने से कोई आउटकम ही ना आए, यानी कि इन 6 में से कुछ भी ना आए, So both are the same things, because that is also impossible thing कि हमने die roll किया और कुछ भी ना आया, ना एक डॉट आया, ना दो डॉट्स आए, ना तीन, ना चार, ना पांच, ना छह, कुछ भी नहीं आया. So both the cases are impossible. We would say that the probability of getting nothing is 0. Once you roll a die, you must get at least one of these things. Similarly, the probability of getting a head is also 0. So we would say that the probability of event 4 is 0. Similarly, the probability of event 5 is also 0. So the simple thing was that we first defined an event, that an event is a collection of sample points or the experimental outcomes. That experimental outcomes may be, okay, 10 minutes. So that can be defined in any way that you like, the way we did. Then once when you are assigning probability to that event, you assign probabilities to all the components of the event, you assign the probabilities to all the sample points, you find the probability of all the experimental outcomes involved, and then in the end you sum up all the probabilities to get the required probability for your event. So as we said that event is a collection of sample points. If we collect all the sample points, we name that collection to be sample space. So your task is to find the probability for sample space for any experimental outcome, whether that experimental outcome is tossing a coin 2 times, rolling a die, or rolling die 2 times. Just find the sample space for that experimental outcome, and after finding sample space, find the probability of that sample space and let me know that what your answer is. Bye.